Millionaire's wife falls ill, and emergency doctors can't save her. Hello and welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any stories. Harvest Moon, one of Boston's most sophisticated restaurants, glowed under the soft lights of an autumn night sky. The aroma of truffles and red wine sauce hung in the air, mingling with the buzz of lively conversations and the delicate clink of crystal glasses. It was an evening like so many others in this establishment, frequented by the city's elite. In the center of the main room, seated at an elegantly decorated table, was Maxwell Thornton, one of the most prominent businessmen on the East Coast. His tanned face and neatly trimmed gray hair exuded an aura of power and success. Next to him, his wife Evelyn, a woman of classic beauty and elegant bearing, smiled graciously as she savored a plate of grilled scallops. The couple was celebrating the closing of a multi-million-dollar deal, and the atmosphere around them reflected this triumph. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne, and the soft sound of a grand piano completed the scene of luxury and refinement. Then, in a matter of seconds, the evening took an unexpected turn. Evelyn, who moments before had been laughing at a joke told by her husband, suddenly paled. Her hand, which was delicately holding a silver fork, began to tremble. Beads of sweat broke out on her forehead, and her eyes widened with an expression of sheer terror. "Evelyn!" Maxwell called out, noticing the sudden change in his wife. "Darling, are you all right?" But Evelyn didn't answer. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, and she gripped the edge of the table so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It was clear that she was in the middle of a severe panic attack. "Help!" Maxwell shouted, rising abruptly from his chair. "My wife needs help!" "Please, ladies and gentlemen, return to your seats," he instructed, gesturing for the customers to move away. "We're dealing with a medical emergency, and we need space. The situation is under control." While Anthony coordinated the restaurant staff to create a perimeter around the Thorntons' table, Maxwell held Evelyn's hand, his eyes full of worry and helplessness. "Breathe with me, sweetheart," he whispered, trying to calm her down. "It's going to be all right. I'm here, with you." Rebecca continued her assessment, checking Evelyn's pulse and observing her vital signs. "Mrs. Thornton," she said softly, "I'm here to help. You're having a panic attack. Let's breathe together, okay? Breathe in slowly through your nose." Time seemed to have slowed down at Harvest Moon. The piano had stopped playing, and the only sound was Evelyn's panting and Rebecca's calm instructions. The other customers watched in silence, some praying, others holding each other's hands in solidarity. Outside, the sirens of an ambulance began to sound in the distance, rapidly approaching. Anthony, who had called the emergency services as soon as he realized the seriousness of the situation, breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that every second was crucial in situations like this. As the medical team approached, the tension in the restaurant reached its peak. The life of Evelyn Thornton, a woman who moments before had been celebrating one of the highlights of her life, now hung by a thread. The contrast between the earlier joy and the present terror was palpable, reminding everyone present of the fragility of human existence. As the paramedics rushed into the restaurant carrying equipment and a stretcher, the gazes of everyone present followed them. The evening that had begun as a celebration of success and wealth had turned into a grim reminder that, in the end, we are all equally vulnerable to the surprises that life has in store for us. The Harvest Moon, with its lavish decor and refined menu, was now the stage for a drama far more intense and real than anyone could have imagined. And as Evelyn was carefully transferred to the stretcher, under the watchful and worried eyes of dozens of strangers, one question hung in the air. What did fate have in store for her, and for all those who witnessed that moment of human frailty? Chapter 2. Crucial Minutes. The shrill sound of sirens cut through the Boston night air, announcing the arrival of the emergency team at Harvest Moon. In a matter of seconds, 2 paramedics entered the restaurant, carrying medical bags and life support equipment. Their blue uniforms contrasted with the elegant atmosphere of the establishment, reminding everyone that the line between luxury and emergency is thinner than you might think. The first paramedic, a tall, broad-shouldered man called Daniel Rodriguez, quickly assessed the scene. His experienced eyes roamed the room, settling on the central table where Evelyn Thornton was still struggling to breathe. Next to her, Dr. Rebecca Chen continued to offer support, while Maxwell held his wife's hand with an expression of pure terror. "This way," Anthony, the manager, guided the medical team. "We've done our best to keep the space clear." Daniel nodded in thanks and approached Evelyn. His partner, Lisa Nguyen, a young but equally competent paramedic, began to prepare the equipment. "Good evening, ma'am," Daniel said in a calm voice, kneeling down next to Evelyn. "I'm Daniel, a paramedic. We're here to help. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" Evelyn, still panting, could barely speak. Rebecca intervened. "She's having a severe panic attack, pulse racing, shallow breathing, heavy sweating." Daniel thanked her with a nod and began to assess Evelyn's vital signs. Lisa, meanwhile, gently asked Maxwell to step back a little. "Sir, we need space to work." "I promise we're doing everything we can for your wife." Maxwell reluctantly took a step back. His eyes didn't leave Evelyn for a second. "She'll be all right, won't she?" His voice trembled with concern. Lisa placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We're doing our best, sir. Your wife is in good hands." Meanwhile, the rest of the restaurant watched in tense silence. Some customers had their cell phones in hand, ready to record the moment, but were quickly discouraged by Anthony and his team. "Please respect the family's privacy," he insisted, circulating among the tables. "This is not a show." Back at the central table, Daniel and Lisa were working in perfect sync. Daniel measured Evelyn's blood pressure, while Lisa prepared a pulse oximeter. "Pressure 160/100, Daniel announced. "Heart rate 120. Lisa nodded, placing the oximeter on Evelyn's finger. "Oxygen saturation 92%. It's low." The situation was getting worse. Evelyn now had a slight cyanosis on her lips, indicating that she wasn't getting enough oxygen. "Let's start oxygen therapy," Daniel decided quickly. "Lisa, prepare the O2 cylinder." While Lisa adjusted the oxygen equipment, Daniel turned to Evelyn, speaking in a soft but firm tone. "Mrs. Thornton, I'm going to put an oxygen mask on your face. This will help you breathe better. Try to relax and inhale deeply when I tell you to." Evelyn nodded weakly, her eyes wide with fear fixed on the paramedics. Maxwell, watching closely, seemed about to collapse. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why does she need oxygen?" Rebecca, who had moved away to make room for the paramedics, approached Maxwell. "Mr. Thornton, your wife is having trouble breathing because of the panic attack. The oxygen will help her calm down and normalize her breathing." Meanwhile, Lisa had finished preparing the oxygen equipment. With gentle but decisive movements, she placed the mask on Evelyn's face. "Now, Mrs. Thornton," Daniel instructed, "breathe deeply. Inhale, exhale. That's it. You're doing fine." The next few minutes were tense. Everyone in the restaurant seemed to be holding their breath, as if they could somehow lend Evelyn air. Gradually, however, the effects of the oxygen began to show. The color returned to Evelyn's face, and her breathing, although still rapid, became more regular. "Saturation rising to 95%, Lisa announced, a slight smile of relief on her face. "Heart rate decreasing to 110. Daniel nodded, pleased with the progress. "Great work, Mrs. Thornton. Keep breathing like that, slowly and deeply." Maxwell, seeing the improvement in his wife's condition, stepped forward. "Is she going to be all right?" he asked, his voice filled with hope and fear. "She's responding well to treatment," Daniel replied, maintaining a professional but empathetic tone. "But we'd like to take her to the hospital for a more thorough assessment." The mention of the hospital seemed to rouse Evelyn from her state of shock. She removed the oxygen mask for a moment, her voice weak but determined. "No, I don't want to go to hospital. I'm feeling better." Daniel and Lisa exchanged worried glances. It was common for patients to resist the idea of hospitalization, especially after a panic episode, but they knew that further evaluation was necessary. "Mrs. Thornton," Lisa began gently, "we understand your reluctance, but it's important to make sure there are no complications. Sometimes symptoms like the ones you've experienced can be indicative of more serious problems." Maxwell, sensing his wife's hesitation, intervened. "Evelyn, darling, please. Let's go to the hospital, if only to make sure everything's all right." The entire restaurant seemed to be on the edge of their seats, awaiting Evelyn's decision. The silence was almost palpable, broken only by the soft sound of oxygen flowing through the mass. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Evelyn nodded slowly. "All right," she murmured, her voice muffled by the mask. "Let's go to the hospital." A collective sigh of relief ran through Harvest Moon. Daniel and Lisa immediately began preparations for transportation, while Maxwell held Evelyn's hand, whispering words of comfort. Anthony, the manager, approached the couple. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, don't worry about anything here. Your bill is on us, and we'll be hoping for your speedy recovery." While the medical team prepared Evelyn for transportation, the rest of the restaurant's customers watched in respectful silence. What had begun as an evening of celebration had turned into a powerful reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of human compassion. As Evelyn was carefully placed on the stretcher, Maxwell by her side, a question hung in the air. What did the future hold for the Thorntons? The night at Harvest Moon had only been the beginning of a journey far longer and more challenging than anyone could have imagined. Chapter 3. An Unexpected Angel. The Harvest Moon, once a sanctuary of elegance and sophistication, had been transformed into a scene of medical emergency. As paramedics Daniel and Lisa worked tirelessly to stabilize Evelyn Thornton, an unexpected figure emerged from the outskirts of the chaos. Olivia Ramirez, a 23-year-old waitress, watched the scene with a mixture of concern and determination in her brown eyes. She had only started working at Harvest Moon 3 months ago, balancing her job with her nursing studies at the University of Massachusetts. At that moment, something inside her ignited, a call she couldn't ignore. With determined steps, Olivia approached the center table. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "My name is Olivia. I'm a nursing student, and I'd like to help if I can." Daniel, the paramedic, cast a quick glance at the young woman. In normal situations, he would have hesitated to accept help from someone unqualified, but something in Olivia's confident posture made him nod. "Right, Olivia. Can you help us keep the area clear and comfort the patient?" Olivia wasted no time. With agile movements, she began to reorganize the space around the table, moving chairs aside and gently asking the spectators to make more room. Her calm and efficient presence had an immediate effect on the tense atmosphere. She then turned to Evelyn, who was still breathing heavily through her oxygen mask. Kneeling down beside the woman, Olivia took her free hand and spoke in a soft but reassuring tone. "Mrs. Thornton, I'm here to help. Let's do a breathing exercise together, okay? When I say inhale, you're going to take a deep breath in through your nose, and when I say exhale, you're going to let it out through your mouth. Shall we try it?" Evelyn, her eyes wide with fear, nodded slightly. Olivia began to guide her through the exercise, her calm, rhythmic voice cutting through the tension in the air. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gradually, Evelyn's breathing began to even out. Maxwell, watching the scene with a mixture of gratitude and astonishment, felt a wave of relief run through his body. Lisa, the paramedic, noticed the improvement. Heart rate down to 100, she announced. Oxygen saturation rising to 97%. Meanwhile, Olivia continued her quiet but effective work. She asked a fellow waiter to bring fresh water and damp towels. When they arrived, she gently wiped Evelyn's forehead with a towel, removing the cold sweat that had accumulated there. "You're doing great, Mrs. Thornton," Olivia encouraged. "Every breath is helping your body to calm down." Olivia's presence not only helped Evelyn, but also had a calming effect on the whole restaurant. Other employees, inspired by her initiative, began to help in small but meaningful ways. A sommelier offered his jacket to cover Evelyn, while another employee helped keep the curious away. Daniel, observing the dynamic, couldn't help but be impressed. "You have a natural gift for this, Olivia," he commented, between vital signs checks. "Have you thought about specializing in emergency medicine?" Olivia smiled shyly. "Actually, I'm thinking of specializing in trauma nursing. This experience has only reinforced that decision." As the minutes passed, Evelyn's condition continued to improve. Her color gradually returned, and her breathing, although still a little labored, was much more controlled. Maxwell, who had been kept on the sidelines during the initial treatment, finally found his voice. Can I approach her now?" he asked, his voice laced with emotion. Lisa nodded, gesturing for him to come closer. Maxwell knelt beside his wife, tears in his eyes. "Evelyn, my love, you've given us quite a fright." Evelyn removed the oxygen mask for a moment, her voice weak but determined. "I'm sorry, darling. I don't know what happened." Olivia, sensing that the couple needed a moment, started to walk away discreetly, but Evelyn took her by the hand. "Wait," she said. "What's your name, dear?" "Olivia, Mom," the waitress replied with a gentle smile. "Olivia," Evelyn repeated, her voice full of gratitude. "Thank you, Mom. You're an angel." The moment was interrupted by Daniel, who announced that it was time to transfer Evelyn to hospital. "We need to do some additional tests, just to make sure everything is okay," he explained. As the team prepared for transport, Maxwell turned to Olivia. "I can't thank you enough," he said, his voice breaking. "You did more than your job required. Please, let me make it up to you somehow." Olivia shook her head, a sincere smile on her face. "There's no need, sir. I only did what anyone would do. I'm glad I could help." When Evelyn was finally placed on the stretcher and carried out of the restaurant, a reverent silence fell over Harvest Moon. Customers and staff watched the scene, many with tears in their eyes, touched by the display of compassion and humanity they had witnessed. Anthony, the manager, approached Olivia, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Olivia. You represented the best of Harvest Moon tonight." As the ambulance drove off, its sirens echoing in the Boston night, those present in the restaurant slowly began to return to their activities. But something had changed. The shared experience had connected them in a profound and unexpected way. Olivia, returning to her work routine, felt a new determination growing inside her. This night had solidified her vocation, showing her the power of compassion and quick action in times of crisis. As she served the remaining tables, she knew that her life had taken a new direction, a path of service and care that she would follow with all her heart. Chapter 4. The Echo of Empathy. The Harvest Moon, once a haven of tranquility and sophistication, now pulsed with a nervous, palpable energy. The drama unfolding at the central table had transformed the restaurant into a microcosm of raw, intense human emotion. At the surrounding tables, customers oscillated between genuine concern and morbid curiosity. Cutlery hung in the air, untouched dishes cooled, while all eyes turned to the epicenter of the crisis. At a nearby table, Jennifer and Michael Anderson, a middle-aged couple celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, watched the scene with a mixture of shock and empathy. Jennifer squeezed her husband's hand, unshed tears glistening in her eyes. "Michael," she whispered, "it could be any one of us." Across the hall, Dr. Robert Kensington, a renowned cardiologist from Massachusetts General Hospital, was fighting the urge to intervene. His years of training pushed him to help, but he knew that the paramedics were doing their job competently. "They're doing everything right," he murmured to his wife, more to reassure himself than to inform her. "But my God, how hard it is to stand still." Near the entrance, a group of young executives who had been celebrating a successful business deal now stood in silence, their smiles and toasts forgotten. One of them, 28-year-old Alex Reeves, felt a wave of nausea as he realized how life can change in an instant. "Man," he whispered to his colleague, "and to think that an hour ago we were complaining about deadlines and reports." The restaurant staff, trained to deal with the whims of the most demanding customers, now found themselves navigating uncharted waters. Olivia, the young waitress who had stood out during the initial crisis, now moved silently between the tables, offering words of comfort and glasses of water to the most shaken customers. Anthony, the manager, maintained a facade of professional calm, but internally his mind was racing. Years of experience in hospitality had not prepared him for this. He watched his staff, proud of how they were behaving, but also aware of the emotional toll this evening would take on everyone. "Keep calm, everyone," he instructed in a low voice, walking past a group of anxious waiters. "Our customers need us now more than ever." At the bar, veteran bartender Joe, a man in his 60s who had worked at Harvest Moon for decades, poured shots of cognac for nervous customers with slightly trembling hands. He had seen a lot in his career, but nothing like this. "In all my years here," he muttered to himself, "I never thought I'd see anything like this." As the minutes dragged on, a strange sense of community began to form among those present. Strangers exchanged glances of understanding, couples hugged each other tighter, and small gestures of kindness began to blossom. An elderly woman, sitting alone at a corner table, picked up her rosary and began to pray silently. Her almost inaudible whisper of Ave Maria was noticed by a young woman at the next table who, although not religious, closed her eyes in a moment of reflection. Near the kitchen, executive chef Pierre Dubois watched the scene through the ajar door. Known for his explosive temper and relentless perfectionism, he now looked small and vulnerable. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, crossing himself, "how fragile we are." The tension reached its peak as the paramedics began to prepare Evelyn for transportation. The metallic sound of the stretcher being adjusted echoed through the restaurant, causing several customers to cringe involuntarily. Maxwell Thornton, closely following the stretcher carrying his wife, seemed to have aged a decade in an hour. His face, normally the picture of confidence and control, was now marked by fear and uncertainty. As the couple passed through the main entrance, a respectful silence fell over Harvest Moon. Then, slowly, like a wave gaining strength, applause broke out. It started with a single person, a young woman by the window, and quickly spread throughout the restaurant. It wasn't a celebratory cheer, but one of solidarity, of shared hope. It was the sound of strangers united by a moment of raw, true humanity. when the doors closed behind the Thorntons and the sound of the ambulance disappeared into the night, Harvest Moon fell silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was a silence charged with emotion, with reflection. Anthony, sensing the need to break the tension, sniffled softly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "on behalf of the entire Harvest Moon team, I would like to thank you for your understanding and compassion during this difficult time. If there is anything we can do to make the rest of your evening more comfortable, please don't hesitate to let us know." Slowly, almost reluctantly, the customers began to return to their meals. But something had changed. Previously, superficial conversations now delved into more meaningful topics. Strangers exchanged smiles of mutual understanding. The shared experience had created an invisible but palpable connection. Olivia, returning to her station after helping clear the Thorntons' table, felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Lisa, the paramedic. "You did a great job today," Lisa said with a tired smile. "Are you sure you don't want to consider a career in the emergency services?" Olivia smiled back, a new determination shining in her eyes. "You know what? I think I will." As the evening progressed at Harvest Moon, those present carried with them not only the memory of an interrupted dinner, but also a profound lesson about the fragility of life and the power of human compassion. The echo of that night would resonate in their lives long after the last plate was collected and the lights were turned out. Chapter 5. The Weight of Responsibility. Harvest Moon had returned to a semblance of normality, but beneath the surface, a current of disquiet and reflection continued to flow. The dramatic scene that had unfolded hours before had left an indelible mark on everyone present, raising complex questions about responsibility, ethics, and the duty to act in times of crisis. In the back office of the restaurant, Anthony, the manager, was sitting with his head between his hands, his impeccable blazer now creased after hours of tension. In front of him, Olivia, the young waitress whose quick intervention had been crucial during the emergency, was waiting nervously. "Olivia," Anthony began, his voice tired but gentle, "first, I want you to know that I'm incredibly proud of how you acted tonight. Your courage and presence of mind were admirable." Olivia nodded, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you, sir. I only did what I thought was right." Anthony sighed, leaning forward. "And that's exactly what we need to talk about. Your action was commendable, but it also raised some legal and ethical concerns that we need to address." Olivia's face paled. Did I do something wrong?" No, Anthony hastened to reassure her. "But the situation is complicated. You see, by intervening in a medical emergency without being a certified health professional, you, and by extension, the restaurant, could be exposed to certain legal risks." Olivia felt a knot forming in her stomach. The idea that her attempt to help could result in legal problems had never occurred to her in the heat of the moment. "But I was only trying to help," she murmured, her voice trembling. Anthony nodded understandingly. "I know, and believe me, we all appreciate your initiative, but we have to consider the wider implications. What if something had gone wrong? What if your intervention, although well-intentioned, had made Mrs. Thornton's situation worse?" The words hung heavily in the air, laden with dark, unrealized possibilities. Just then, a soft knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Lisa, the paramedic, who had attended to Evelyn Thornton. She had returned to the restaurant to pick up some forgotten belongings, and overhearing the conversation, felt she had to intervene. "Excuse me," she said, entering the office. "I hope I am not intruding, but I couldn't help overhearing. If I may, I'd like to offer my professional perspective on the matter." Anthony gestured for her to enter. grateful for the interruption and the possibility of an expert opinion. Lisa turned to Olivia, her gaze firm but gentle. "Olivia, what you did tonight was extraordinary. In emergency situations, the first few minutes are crucial, and your quick and calm intervention made a real difference." Olivia felt a weight being lifted off her shoulders, but Lisa continued. "However, Anthony is right to raise these concerns. The line between helping and causing unintentional harm can be very thin, especially for someone with no formal training." Anthony intervened. "That's exactly what worries me. How can we balance our employees' desire to help with the need to protect them and the restaurant from possible legal repercussions?" Lisa thought for a moment before answering. "The solution is not to discourage action, but to ensure that everyone is adequately prepared to act. Basic first aid training for all employees would be a good start." Olivia's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "I'd love to do some training like that." Anthony considered the idea, nodding slowly. "That makes sense. Not only would it better prepare us for future emergencies, but it could also protect us legally by showing that we take proactive steps to ensure our clients' safety." Lisa smiled approvingly. "Exactly. Also having clear policies on how to act in emergencies, when to call for professional help, what to do and what not to do, can give employees the confidence that they are acting within established guidelines." The conversation continued for some time, with the three of them discussing the ethical and practical nuances of preparing for emergencies in a restaurant environment. When they finally finished, it was after midnight, but everyone felt that they had reached a deeper understanding and a concrete plan of action. On leaving the office, Olivia turned to Anthony and Lisa. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "Tonight taught me a lot about responsibility and the power of our actions. I promise that I will strive to always be prepared, no matter what." Anthony smiled, placing a comforting hand on Olivia's shoulder. "That's why you're such a valuable part of our team, Olivia. Your willingness to learn and grow is admirable." As the three of them parted for the evening, each carried with them a new appreciation for the complexity of the decisions we face in times of crisis. The experience at Harvest Moon had been a powerful reminder that while the instinct to help is noble, it must be balanced with knowledge, preparation, and a clear understanding of the responsibilities we take on when we intervene in other people's lives. The restaurant was quiet now, the tables cleared, the lights dimmed, but the echo of the lessons learned that night would continue to resonate, not just on the walls of Harvest Moon, but in the minds and hearts of all those who had witnessed the power of human compassion and the weight of responsibility that comes with it. The morning sun filtered through Harvest Moon's windows, illuminating a transformed restaurant, where once there had been elegantly arranged tables, now rows of chairs filled the space. The aroma of fresh coffee replaced that of sophisticated dishes, and the buzz of animated conversation filled the air. It was the first day of Harvest Moon's first aid training program, an initiative born out of the dramatic events of that fateful night weeks ago. Anthony, the manager, watched the scene with a mixture of pride and apprehension. "I never thought he'd turn my restaurant into a classroom," he muttered to himself. "But here we are." At the front of the room, Lisa, the paramedic who had attended to Evelyn Thornton, was preparing to start the session. She had volunteered to conduct the training, seeing an opportunity to expand awareness of first aid beyond the traditional confines of the emergency services. "Good morning, everyone," Lisa began, her clear, confident voice echoing through the room. "We are here today because we recognize a fundamental truth. Emergencies can happen anytime, anywhere, and when they do, the first few minutes are crucial." The Harvest Moon staff, from the waiters to the cooks, listened attentively. Olivia stood out among them, her eyes shining with determination. Lisa continued, "The training you will receive will not only enable you to act in emergency situations, but will also significantly increase the safety and well-being of everyone who frequents this establishment." Throughout the day, Lisa guided the team through a series of scenarios and techniques. They learned about cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, how to deal with choking, recognize the signs of a heart attack or stroke, and how to respond to severe allergies. Remember, Lisa emphasized during a practical demonstration, the goal of first aid is to preserve life, prevent a condition from worsening, and promote recovery. You are the first line of defense until professional help arrives. As the training progressed, there was a visible change in the employees' attitudes. What began as apprehension and nervousness gradually turned into confidence and determination. During a break, Olivia approached Anthony. "You know," she said, "after that night with Mrs. Thornton, I felt so powerless, but now with this training, I feel like I can really make a difference." Anthony smiled, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "That's exactly why we're doing this, Olivia. It's not just about following regulations or avoiding legal problems. It's about empowering our team to look after each other and our clients." As the day drew to a close, Lisa gathered everyone together for a final reflection. "What you have learned here today goes far beyond this restaurant," she said. "You now carry knowledge that can save lives anywhere, at home, on the street, in a park. You have become guardians of safety in your community." Lisa's words resonated deeply with the team. Many exchanged looks of determination, understanding the weight and privilege of the responsibility they now bore. As the staff dispersed, Anthony stayed behind, observing the now empty hall. Harvest Moon had always been known for its exceptional food and sophisticated atmosphere. Now, he thought, it would be known for something even more valuable, an unwavering commitment to the safety and well-being of everyone who crossed its doors. On the way out, Olivia paused for a moment, looking at the place where, weeks ago, she had faced one of the most challenging moments of her life. Now, armed with knowledge and confidence, she knew she was prepared to face any emergency that arose. Harvest Moon had been transformed. It was no longer just a restaurant, but a beacon of preparedness and care in its community. And as the lights went out that night, a new era of responsibility and compassion was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.